Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are rolling up our sleeves and really demystifying the core components of AI agents. Look, if you've been working with large language models, you already know they are incredibly powerful. But let's be real, there is a massive, massive leap between just typing a prompt into a browser and actually building a robust, production-ready system that acts on your behalf. So, in this explainer, we are going to give you a clear, actionable blueprint to help you move way beyond those basic chatbots and construct the foundational architecture of a true AI agent. Let's just dive right into it.
So, what turns a simple chatbot into an autonomous agent? This is literally the fundamental question we have to answer before we even think about building. We are shifting from basic text generation to building fully equipped, tool-using autonomous systems. You see, a basic assistant or chatbot, it might use a tool, sure, but it pauses and waits for your permission at every single step. It's essentially a reactive proxy. An agent, on the other hand, operates on a totally different axis, the axis of autonomy. It runs its own loop, it takes a goal, reasons about it, constructs a plan, decides exactly which tools to execute, and then observes the results to figure out what to do next, all without coming back to you between every single step. To achieve that kind of independence, well, we need the right architecture.
And here is our blueprint for today. We're looking at 4 highly sequential building blocks. Number 1, LLMs and token machines. Number 2, controlling LLMs with prompts. Number 3, building with OpenAI agents. And finally, number 4, enhancing agents with tools.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, LLMs and token machines. This is the brain of our operation. To build effective agents, you really have to pull back the curtain. Large language models aren't magic boxes, right? They're actually highly complex statistical engines. And the very first thing you need to internalize is that they do not read words the way you and I do. They read tokens. A token is the fundamental unit of data processed by an LLM. Here's a fun fact for you. The word apple might be one single token, but a more complex name or even a typo, the model might split that into 3 or 4 separate tokens. That means these models are essentially probabilistic token machines. They're constantly calculating the mathematical probability of what the very next token should be based entirely on everything that came before it. So why does this matter to you as a builder? Because text length does not equal token length. Measuring these tokens is absolutely critical. Honestly, it's the only way you can keep your financial budgets and your context windows from blowing up when your agent is just running autonomously in the background.
And the cool part, we can actively tune this brain. You aren't just stuck with the default settings. When you're building an agent, you can and should adjust the model's parameters to match the specific job it's doing. Take temperature, for example. This controls randomness. If you're building a creative writing agent, you crank that dial up. But if you've got a coding agent or a strict data extractor, you turn it way down. You're trading off creativity for strict consistency. Then there's top P, which basically restricts the pool of probable next tokens, helping you balance really diverse outputs versus highly focused ones. And finally, max tokens. Think of this as your absolute safety valve for cost control. It limits the output length so your autonomous agent doesn't just go off, accidentally write a massive novel, and completely blow your API budget in one afternoon.
Moving right along to Section 2, controlling LLMs with prompts. This is where we give the brain its persona. Now, some folks out there think prompt engineering is just a buzzword, but the reality is the exact opposite. Prompt engineering is literally how you make these agents predictable and productive. By following an essential prompt playbook, you give that brain a specific persona, steering the LLM toward reliable on-spec output and avoiding those super common pitfalls, like getting wild variable formatting. So where do you start? Always assign a clear role. Saying something like you are a senior DevOps engineer immediately sets the vocabulary and the analytical depth of the agent. Next, you want to front-load your instructions so the agent's primary directive doesn't get lost in the noise. You also need to use strict delimiters to fence off user data. This keeps the agent from getting confused between your instructions and the user's inputs. Then, provide few-shot examples. Show, don't just tell. Give the agent exact examples of what a successful output looks like. And finally, instruct it to think step by step. This is huge. It forces the model to actually lay out its reasoning process before just jumping straight to a conclusion. And just think about how far you can take those instructions. Imagine a really complex search researcher workflow, complete with decision nodes, loops, conditional logic, the whole shebang. As a builder, you can translate that entire decision tree directly into an agent's prompt to strictly guide its behavior. You can literally tell the agent, okay, first decide whether the question is internal or external. Then run the query. If no results are found, I want you to switch to the other location and repeat the search. You're essentially coding complex, conditional logic using everyday natural language. It turns a static set of rules into a highly dynamic thought process that your agent can actually follow.
That brings us to Section 3, Building with OpenAI Agents, the engine.
So, we have the brain and we have the persona. Now, we plug them into an engine. The OpenAI Agents SDK acts kind of like the central nervous system here, connecting our carefully crafted prompt to the model and to the outside world. Building a minimal agent with this SDK involves a really straightforward step-by-step process that brings those static text instructions to life as a runnable, controllable system. Step 1, you set the instructions. That's the persona we just talked about. Step 2, you define the specific model and tweak those dials like temperature and top P. And step 3, you define the inputs and outputs. And honestly, this right here is where the magic really happens for production stability. Here's the thing. LLMs are stochastic by nature. They are inherently unpredictable text generators. If you try to just parse their plain text output in a complex software workflow, your system is going to constantly break. It's a nightmare. But by forcing that stochastic model to return data in strictly typed input and output schemas, using libraries like Pydantic and Python, for example, you completely eliminate brittle string parsing. You are practically guaranteeing that the agent will return the exact, precise data structure your application needs to keep running. I cannot stress this enough. This single technique is what keeps your multi-agent workflows incredibly stable. Furthermore, when you're out there letting an agent run completely autonomously, you absolutely have to know what it's thinking and what it's doing behind the scenes. The built-in tracing telemetry in the API gives you the exact visibility you need. It exposes every single LLM interaction and every single tool invocation. This means you can debug, optimize, and carefully track the cost of every decision your agent makes. If your agent makes a weird mistake or, say, gets stuck in an endless loop, tracing allows you to pop open the hood and see exactly which step in its reasoning went off the rails. It's a total game changer. All right, let's wrap this up with Section 4, Enhancing Agents with Tools, the hands. Okay, so a brain with a persona running in an engine is fantastic, but at this point, it's still kind of trapped in a box. We need to attach some hands so I can actively interact with external systems, pull in real-time data, and actually affect the real world. But before we just start blindly handing over APIs, it is vital to understand a core distinction in agent architecture. Simply executing fixed sequential prompt steps one right after the other, that is just prompt chaining. It's super useful, don't get me wrong, but it's rigid. Giving an agent true agency means letting it decide for itself when to trigger a tool. You hand the tools over, and the agent's internal reasoning loop autonomously decides, hey, do I need a tool right now? Which tool should I use? And what specific data do I need to pass into it to solve the problem in front of me? Let's look at how this actually plays out. Imagine we have a simple static research planner. By injecting just a single tool into the mix, let's call it the Get Research Sources tool, we instantly transform that static planner into a highly dynamic, autonomous researcher. Here's what happens. We instruct the agent to use this tool first. The agent autonomously reaches out, pulls live external data, and actually looks at what sources are currently available. Then it actively constrains its own strategy based on that real-world data, and finally outputs a factual, highly accurate 5-step action plan. The agent literally used the tool to inform and update its own reasoning process. And there you have it, folks, the 4 foundational blocks of our blueprint. You now understand exactly how to give your agent a brain using token prediction, a persona through highly structured prompting, an engine via the Agents SDK, and hands through autonomous tool integration. But naturally, this raises a massive, lingering question for our next explainer. Think about it. Your agent can now think and act in the moment, but how on earth will you teach it to remember? The next frontier in building robust AI systems is tackling how to give these agents long-term memory and knowledge retrieval, so they can actually learn and adapt from their past interactions. I'm going to leave you with that provocative thought to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and as always, keep building.